Hi, so I'm going to talk to you a little bit about ICS files and how I use these manually to send calendar invitations to my attendees for an event that I run called UPPSTART. So I've had this question quite a few times from other event organizers asking me how I'm sending invites out. And essentially they look a bit like this. So when I send out an event calendar invitation, it comes up nicely within Gmail. You can see here at the top, and it gets this nice kind of rich format at the top. And this will look different in different email clients, but in Gmail, which is quite an important client, obviously, you want it to look good and you want it to have all the sort of nice built-in functionality that Gmail supports. Ultimately, the end goal here is to make sure that the people you're sending the invites to can easily open the file, they can save it to their calendar. There's a few little gotchas to think about as well, like how do you edit the event later on? If you send these files out manually to people, how do you edit them if, for example, the time or date of the event changes, which can happen? How do you then do that without a complete disaster, sending duplicate invites out and so on? There's a few little things like that to think about that I'll cover in this video. Firstly, why would you want to do this? You can do this within Google Calendar. So I don't know what the actual limit is within Google Calendar. I'll just quickly Google that. Okay, so according to Google itself, you can invite up to 200 people to an event. So it's not that many, actually. 200 people is quite limited. I don't know if that's different for business accounts or whatever, but that's quite low. So if you're going past 200 people, you've got a problem right there that is just not going to be possible with Google Calendar. Outlook will probably have similar limits. So once you've got past sort of several hundred people, you're going to run into issues using just the standard kind of calendar interfaces to do this. So you're probably going to, there are other tools to do this. I think there are some event tools that might handle event invitations baked into their event solutions. A lot of these ticketing tools that you use do this, and sometimes mailing tools as well, like email marketing tools will have these built in. I found they've been a bit complicated and a bit difficult to work with, so I just ended up opting for a very simple solution. I have an emailing solution that I use. It's arbitrary really what that is. I use one called Mautic, but it could be MailChimp, it could be anything. You could even be doing this via Gmail or Gmass, or various different tools you could use. And I attach the ICS file to the email and just send it out to my guests that way. And so I create my file manually, and I found that works really effectively. This is the exact same one here. You can see it actually at the bottom attached. This is the one I'm going to edit in this video. And you can see it just pulls up nicely and does what I need it to do. So without further ado then, so what's all this gubbins over here? So basically this is kind of after a lot of trial and error, what I have basically come to in terms of the basic calendar invitation that works well. Obviously for your use case, if you've got different needs, it has to work well in Outlook or whatever. I've biased this a little bit towards Gmail because I just think that's important, and I think a lot of people are using Gmail. And generally I think if it's working well in Gmail, it's going to work well in other clients too, but you can go kind of all in with this stuff. I've kept it kind of simple so it works for most people. So you can find these, by the way, if you Google things like create ICS calendar online, create iCal, Google that, and you'll get these kind of like tools that will help you create these kind of files. I found they can be a bit fiddly, so this is one that I've ended up with. And so I'll put the link to, or I put the actual whole text, I think, in the description in YouTube, so you can see down below in the description. And you can just copy this. So essentially what you want to do first of all is you want to create a file and you want to save it. So I'm using an editor called Sublime Text. It's free to download. You could use any text editor, but you want to basically start writing your file in here, and then you want to save it as this .ics. So make sure you save it as a .ics file. And it doesn't really matter what name you give it, but that will be your calendar file. And then you want to paste all this stuff in here, so don't miss anything, right from the beginning part, and paste all of this. So yeah, I won't go into all the details of the sort of technical things in this, and it can get quite complicated, so you don't really need to worry about some of this stuff. You really just want to be able to edit this to your event and then be able to send it out. So go through the stuff that you need to know here. So again, ignoring this, it's a Gregorian calendar, so it's just the type of calendar it is. This is all sort of technical stuff just to say that it's a request type. This is where it begins, so you say beginning the event, and then everything in here is basically the calendar event itself. So first of all, you've got this DTSTART and DTEND and DTSTAMP. So I'll go through what those mean. As always, if in doubt, ChatGPT is very useful for these kind of definitions. So throwing this in here, it actually gives you quite a nice breakdown. So the DTEND is used to specify the end of the date. So that's what DTEND means. And DTSTART is the start. So essentially, your DTSTART is the start date and time for your event. And DTEND is the end date and time for the event. So then if we break this down further, you've got this T part. So first of all, you've got the date. So if we go over here, you can see here the date is 2023, 11, that's November, and 10th. So it's the 10th of November, 2023. And then T means we're now changing to a time. And then you've got this time here, which I'll break down a bit more in detail. So the time here you can see is stored in hours, minutes, seconds. So hours, minute, second. So hours, 09, minutes, 00, and seconds, 00. So it's 9 hours, 0 minutes, and 0 seconds. So, if I wanted that to be 5 minutes, it would look like this, essentially. And then you've got this Z character on the end, or Z character. The character indicates the time is set in Coordinated Universal Time, UTC. So this is the time zone. So that's pretty important to make sure that obviously the time zone is correct. I suggest if you do these events, one good way to do this is to test. So create a time that you think is going to be a certain time in the right time zone and test it and send it to somebody like a Gmail that you a friend's Gmail or family or whatever, and just test it and make sure it opens in the correct time zone before you send it out to your entire audience. So in terms of which letter to use here, I've just done a quick ChatGPT here, again, just to kind of clarify on this letter. If you wanted to do it in your time zone, there are ways to do that, and you can start getting fancy with kind of modifying the time zone. I'm not going to go into the details of that in this video. It's going to get very long. Time zones are very complicated and boggle my mind. So I basically would suggest you just go for what I've done here, which is use Z, which is UTC, which is Coordinated Universal Time. So kind of a universal stamp, it's +0. So you can basically work out what the correct time zone should be in UTC and then use that. That's probably the safest way to go about things, I think. So that's what I did for my event. I worked out what the time was in UTC and basically did it that way. Okay, so I think we've covered the start and end time. The DT stamp was when the actual event invitation was created. I don't know what really impact this has, to be honest, but just create a date. So essentially, it's going to be the date. You can either do it from right now, or you can do it as the date when the actual invitations get sent out. It doesn't really matter a huge amount. Just use something kind of sensible there. I'd suggest you do it when you create the file and just have that as a date there. So the next thing is this UID value. So this is actually extremely important. And if you miss this when you send out your invitations, you really might be kicking yourself later on if you want to change your event in any way, shape or form. So if you imagine you've sent this to thousands of people and they've all put this in their calendars, in their Google calendars, and then you want to change the event and someone says, oh, the venue has changed, so you need to do an update, which is, happens in the event world. This can be a disaster if you haven't used the UID. So essentially, it's just a unique identifier that basically tells the client that what invitation this is. So if you're going to update the invitation later, you need to have a UID set previously. So the ones that everyone's now saved in their calendars, they need to be using a UID. Otherwise, it's not going to know that this is an update to that version. So it actually doesn't matter what you put in here at all. I've just chosen a standard thing. UPPSTART is the name of my event, so I've just put UP and then 2023. You can do it on a campaign, so it could be like, let's say you were Google, it might be Goog, and then it might be 2024, and you could have like a 0, 1, and you could put like anything you want in there. Basically, it doesn't really matter. I'm not too sure about hyphens. I'd be a bit careful about hyphens actually. So let's just go without hyphens for the sake of argument. Keep it simple if in doubt. But yeah, use an ID. So again, I'm going to go for UP 2024, which is my latest campaign. So once I've set that ID and sent out the calendar invites, if I want to update the event later, all I have to do is send another calendar invite with the same ID and update the date. So the last modified date here, which I'll come to in a minute. And if I do that, the clients like, for example, Gmail, they're going to know that this was the same event, and they're going to do clever things like, for example, up here in Gmail, it's going to ask the user automatically, would you like to update this? And I think it might even do that automatically. So different clients are going to handle this differently, but you're basically kind of in the best case scenario there, that you know that the client knows this is the same event you've updated. So yeah, just can't stress enough how important that is to use an ID. Just throw it in there, and you know it might come to your rescue later on. So the organizer is just basically the email for the person sending the calendar invite. So you can see here, this is actually showing up here in the invitation. So you've got this invites@uppstart.com. As far as I know, this can be literally anything. And so you can put whatever you want in there. I'm not sure if this needs to come from the same domain or not. You might want to sort of look into that a bit more. You know, it's probably safe to do it from a domain that you're sending it from. Otherwise, it might look a bit spammy, and that might be risking kind of things within Gmail and so on. So I would go for the same domain name. So whatever you're using to send your emails out, I would definitely recommend using the same domain. But as far as I'm aware, you can use pretty much anything in there. To send the invitation, and that just kind of just looks so nice and professional if it's like got something in there. You can use a real email as well. That's the one you're sending from, whatever. So that's that. So I'm going to keep that the same. Created date I've covered is basically just a timestamp of when you made this file. The description then. So that's basically down here, and that's what's going to show up in the calendar description. So let me see if I can find an example of that. Okay, so this was the actual invitation that actually went out that I received for the one that I'm showing you. And so you can see here, that's how the organizer will show up. And you get this description down here. So this is basically, again, it's going to look different in different calendars, but most of them deal with them in pretty similar ways. So that's basically your description part. And then you've got the title here, which is, you probably guessed, this one over here, which is the summary. So down there, that's the title. That's what's showing up in this UPPSTART online one. And you've got location, which is the location. So in my case, I've kind of hacked this a little bit, and I've gone for using a location that's a URL. So there's a sneaky little growth hack that I've actually found quite useful, especially if you want to point the user somewhere, for example, a Google map, or it could be a virtual event. You can actually put a link in there, and in many calendars, it's going to end up clickable like you see here. So that is basically location. You could also put the address of the place. That's what it was really designed for. Okay, so status confirmed, just keep that as it is. It just basically says that this is definitely an event that's happening. So it tells the client this is definitely happening. It's not like a tentative event, it's actually happening. And so the summary I've covered is the title. This TRANSP opaque thing, that basically refers to how the event is going to look in people's calendars, if it's going to look busy or not. Keep it as that one is my recommendation. It basically means that the event is going to show up as blocked in the person's calendar, or busy is the technical word. And so that's probably what you want. And so all of these terms you can kind of Google, and if you want to modify them, then that's fine. And so, yeah, you want some stuff on the end here, so end v event and end v calendar. So once you've customized all this, you've basically got your file. You just literally save it, save that file on your computer somewhere. And this is the calendar then you need to then attach to your email that's going out in your mailing list. So I'm going to modify this event to my current event, and then I'm just going to hit pause when I do that, and then I'm going to just do a test run and show you what that looks like as it comes up. Okay, so I've modified most of this file now. I just wanted to hit record again whilst I was going through the modifying the date, because that can be a little bit fiddly. So just wanted to hit record and show my thought process there. So this was the old date. So first of all, I'm just going to show you the start date just to show you how I do this one. So it's obviously year, month, day. So first of all, the year 2023 will become 2024. The month is going to be the 4th. It's April. That's right, the 4th. So 04. And it's going to be on the 10th. So that is going to be 10. And then the time, this is where it gets a little bit tricky. I have to make sure that I'm converting this from UTC. So remember that Z character means we're in UTC. So basically what I did to do that was just say time in UTC. You can Google this stuff. The time is now 12:11 in UTC, and I'm in Sweden, so my time right now is 13:12. So I can see that UTC seems to be 1 hour behind my time in Sweden, which is what the date is going to be set in. So the time for my event is starting on the 10th of April 2024, as is on our website, at 1900. So to get it into UTC, if I'm not mistaken, I'll have to just take off 1, so it'll be 1800. So in here, I'm just going to basically make this, remember it's hours, minutes, seconds, so 1800. The minutes is going to be 00, and seconds is going to be 00. So simple as that, so it's going to be 1800. I'm going to test this when I do a test send. That's one of the main things I'll be looking for when I'm testing this, is to make sure that is obviously coming up at the correct time in my time zone. So the nice thing about this as well is that it's basically so whoever receives this in their calendar, say somebody receives this in New York, is going to automatically show in the correct time because they're just putting this into their calendar. So it is correct in UTC, so therefore it's going to show up in the person's calendar in the correct time zone. So it's just a nice simple way to make sure you don't really have to worry about times and time zones. So 22:30 is the end time on the same day. So what I'm going to do is just going to copy and paste this whole thing. And so 22:30 would be again -1, so that'll be 21:30. So I'm going to go in and say DTEND, and instead of 1800, I'm going to say 21 and then 30. And again, the seconds will stay as 0. So that's hours, minutes, and seconds. So that's basically how I've modified that. And what I'm going to do is go ahead and I'm going to do a timestamp. I think I'm just going to create the timestamp for the event for today, I think. So I think I'll just do the same stamp, but I'm just going to basically modify this time now for 2024. And I'm going to say, what's the date now? It is the 30th of January. So here I'm just going to go 01 for January and 30th, and UTC. I'm actually just going to make this 9 in the morning just to keep it simple. So this timestamp doesn't really matter a huge amount. It's just basically this stamp when the file was created. There might be a reason for this. Don't know. And also, by the way, I'm going to use that same timestamp now and just do the same thing with the last modified. That's actually a little bit more important. Because it will tell the file, again, if you're going to actually change the file later with this ID, you want to then change the time so that is when you last modified it, and that's going to tell the client this was a modification. Okay, so what I've done here now is I've saved the file, so that's now finished. You can see here, this is the actual file saved on my Mac. For the sake of simplicity, I'm going to show you this using a tool called GMass. This same principle, though, could be applied to any emailing tool. Essentially, what you're doing is you're adding a file attachment to the email that's being sent. Simple as that. So the ICS file is a file attachment. So any mailing tool that supports adding file attachments, I think MailChimp does this. The tool that I've been using for many thousands of people is called Mautic, an open source tool. This does this. I think most of them would do this. GMass is a simple tool that basically lets you use Gmail within more of a mailing solution, so you can go beyond the Gmail limits using it. I quite like it actually for smaller lists of people. So I'm going to use this just as a test. I've gone ahead and set this up already, basically, so it's going to go to a couple of test sends, just inboxes that I know exist, so that I can just test how they look for the first time. And these have never received this calendar invite before, so it will give me a good test of sort of how it's going to look. So always do a test. I can't stress enough how important it is to test this before you send. When you're fiddling around with manual files like this, and it's not a big multi-million-dollar company who's doing the testing for you, make sure you at least send one test before you send it to thousands of people. So basically just get the file. In this particular case, it's just literally a Gmail email. So I'm just attaching it just like I would a normal email. If it was MailChimp, you would go into the MailChimp settings and attach it and so on. So I'm going to go ahead, send on this, and see what happens. Just one little thing with the GMass, why I like using this as well, is that you can essentially put many people within the to box, and you can pull people from a Google Sheet, which is what I've done here. So these two came from a Google Sheet. But when I send this email, it's basically going to conceal the emails, so they're not going to see anyone in the to field. So quite like this tool. It's very handy. So I'm going to click send and see what happens. Okay, that didn't really go to plan because my trial has expired. So actually was intending to purchase GMass. So I'll go ahead and do that, and then do that again. Okay, I've gone ahead and purchased a subscription now. So this should now send, and then we'll see what gets received. Okay, looks like some issue, probably because I just upgraded. So let me just check this. I don't know, something weird happened there, but it's probably because I just upgraded on the fly. So yeah, I've just clicked it again, and it says it's sent out now. So we'll see what the recipients received. Okay, so had a few issues with the email sent. It was nothing to do with the calendar invites, but fixed that. And basically I'm not going to go into detail of that, but I sent another email, just the same file. And sort of good news and bad news. I wanted to hit record on this just to show the problem here. And again, why it's really important to test with calendars, invites ahead to make sure the times line up. So good news is it was received. This is the inbox that I sent it to, one of the test inboxes. You can see it comes in. It does read it correctly. All the titles are correct. The location looks correct. You get this nice little feature to add to your calendar. I love that about this particular format, that Gmail picks it up and will basically just give you like a one-click add to calendar button there, which is really nice. So the bad news is the time didn't actually work correctly. It's out of sync. And I realized why, which is actually kind of a non-trivial thing to think about when you're using time zones. So earlier, if you remember, I mentioned to use UTC. So this Z character basically means you're using UTC time. What I failed to appreciate was that if you're dealing with dates in the future, you have to be aware of daylight saving time and what's the opposite of that? Winter time, whatever that's called. I hate dates. I hate this stuff. But basically, it's just a thing. It exists. And so in Sweden, that changes. I have to always Google this to find when does the time change in Sweden. I'm guessing it's kind of consistent across Europe. I don't know. So it's the... Let's see, last weekend in March. So my event happens to be on the 10th of April. So the time is actually about to change just before my event happens. And that's why Google is basically showing this in the wrong time, because UTC, so this time in here, doesn't take into account time zones at all. It's quite complicated, and I had to do a little bit of research on this actually myself on YouTube, just to kind of get up to speed. But essentially UTC is like a consistent stamp. There are no time zone. There are no daylight savings at all in UTC. It's a consistent time, like a staple, if you like. And so the Swedish time, because that's changing in between, the offset is actually changing. So without getting into too much like nitty gritty about time zones and daylight savings times and so on, what I'd suggest you do is just test this and make sure that when you test it, it is actually opening in the correct time. So normally your system will kind of accommodate this and figure it out. So for example, when I open the calendar invite, actually, I'm seeing already when I just open the file on my Mac, it's incorrect and it's showing as 8 o'clock instead of 7 o'clock, which is what I was going for. So the offset has changed slightly. And actually, just to show you that is actually what was happening here, I just did a quick test. And I've changed this file and I saved it as a test file. And I was curious just to make sure that it was the daylight savings thing that was causing that problem. So what I did was I went and modified the DTSTART to be 03 instead of 04. So instead of March, which is past when the times have changed and the summertime, is it? Yeah, is kicking in. That's correct, isn't it? Summertime, yeah. Confuses the hell out of me, this stuff. But anyway, it's 1 month before that happens. And I've also changed the end time and the other dates to just basically the month before. If I open that in the calendar, you see now it is correctly showing up as 1900. So again, that other one was showing up as... I've deleted that event now, but it was showing up as 1 hour ahead. So that definitely was the issue. So really it's just a case of testing this and making sure that you test it locally on your computer. It loads up. You send a real test. I would suggest doing it to someone else's Gmail as a real test, just to see how it shows up in their calendar. And once you're happy with the UTC time zone, then you lock that down. So I'm going to go and do that update now. Okay, so that's now fixed and updated. I've run a test locally, so if I now open that calendar invite, it correctly shows on my computer now the right date, 10th of April, the right times, 19 to 22:30. That's what I expected. So now I'm going to do a final test again and just send this with my test list here. Final test should work, and I'm going to hit send. And see what loads on the test Gmail account there. Okay, so that looks pretty good now. So this is the test email that I sent. You can see here it's attached, the invite. For some strange reason, it actually renames the invite in Gmail. Don't know why it does that. There must be a Gmail thing because it's not called that. It's called something else. But yeah, whatever. It's renaming it for some reason. I guess it's picking up that it's an event invitation and renaming it. But yeah, you can see here it should work, and you can see the times now are, if for some reason it's in PM time, but yeah, it's correct. It's 7 PM to 10:30, which is now correct. So the offset is correctly set now. So you could go ahead, for example, now and add that to your calendar, and that would pop up straight into the person's Google Calendar. You can see it's there in the correct time. So that's basically it. Yeah, just feel free to ping me a message or comment below if you've got any questions. I'm happy to cover them as best I can. And enjoy. Here's some confetti.